In the glamorous car world of the late 1960s, the West had it all. Lamborghinis with their mid-mounted V12s, Porsches that could scare your passengers into silence, and Lotuses that were as light as a packet of chips but 10 times more fragile. And then, behind the Iron Curtain, in a land where most people considered a Trabant a luxury purchase, one man decided he was going to build East Germany's answer to the Lamborghini Miura. His name was Heinz Melkus, and his car, the RS 1000, remains one of the most bizarre, brilliant and almost forgotten sports cars in history. You see, after World War II, Germany split. West Germany became a capitalized powerhouse, exporting everything from Mercedes limousines to BMW sports saloons. East Germany, officially the German Democratic Republic, got stuck with Soviet-style communism, a centrally planned economy, and a list of available cars that read more like an agricultural equipment catalogue than a motoring brochure. If you were a car enthusiast in the East, your options were bleak. You could have the Trabant, a car with the structural rigidity of an egg carton, or the Wartburg, which at least had 3 cylinders, but still made you smell faintly of 2-stroke oil for the rest of your life. Western cars were banned from import, so the chances of owning a Ferrari or a Porsche were exactly zero. For most, the idea of a sports car was as distant as a trip to the moon. And yet, in 1968, one man decided to challenge that reality. That man was Heinz Melkus. Now, Heinz Melkus wasn't just a dreamer, he was a respected racing driver, an engineer, and crucially someone who knew how to navigate the bureaucratic minefield of East German politics. Through years of competing in Formula Junior and Formula 3, often representing the GDR abroad, he had earned a reputation, and more importantly, the trust of the regime. That trust would prove essential when Melkus approached the government with a frankly outrageous idea to build a mid-engine sports car in East Germany, not as a one-off racing machine, but as something people could actually buy, assuming people meant those with deep political connections. Against all odds, the authorities actually agreed. Melkus had been inspired by an encounter at a Formula 3 race in Yugoslavia, where he saw a Lotus Elan in the metal for the first time. The sleek proportions, the lightness, the sheer westernness of it all lit a fire within him. But if he was going to build something similar in Dresden, he would have to do it without access to Western components, Western materials, or Western funding. So the starting point was humble. The ladder frame chassis from the Wartburg 353, a perfectly adequate family saloon, but hardly the stuff of exotic dreams. Melkus and a small team modified it extensively, reinforcing critical areas for stiffness, removing unnecessary weight, and reshaping it to accept a mid-mounted engine layout. The body was no afterthought. Melkus, along with his sons Peter and Yuli, began by sculpting a 1:10 scale model inspired by the Miura's flowing lines and other Western exotic cars. This grew to a 1:5 prototype, refined with the help of designer Stefan Scheidler at the Berlin Art Academy. The end result was a fiberglass shell that looked as though it had been smuggled across the border from Italy. Low, sleek, and blessed with gull-wing doors for maximum drama. Beneath the curves were integrated steel roll bars. So everything so far was good. Let's talk motor. And this is where the fantasy met a brick wall of communist reality. In a perfect world, Melkus might have fitted a compact V6 or even a high-revving 4-cylinder from the West. In East Germany, the best option available was the Wartburg 353's 992cc 2-stroke triple, an engine more commonly found hauling a family and their picnic basket to the Baltic coast. Still, this was no stock Wartburg motor. Melkus tuned it heavily, mated it to a bespoke 5-speed gearbox, and coaxed out a whopping 68 horsepower. Now that's not going to frighten a Miura, but in a car weighing around 680 kilograms, it was enough to hit 102 miles per hour or 165 kilometers per hour, which was blistering by Eastern Germany standards. And for those with influence and the right contacts, there were upgrades. Some RS1000s had the engines bored out to 90 horsepower, while at least one example received a Müller Andernach 1.3 litre 2-stroke V6 engine, producing 110 horsepower. The sound from that engine must have been extraordinary. I mean 2-stroke V6 revving to the moon. Anyways, it's easy to laugh at the numbers today, but remember, this was a car built in a country where most people waited over a decade for the privilege of buying a Trabant. Meaning the RS1000 wasn't just fast by local standards, it was a revelation. With its mid-engine layout, lightweight, and suspension tuned for agility, it handled with a sharpness that no other East German car could match. And unlike the Western sports cars, the RS1000's performance wasn't about brute force, it was about momentum, keeping the revs up, using the chassis to carry speed through corners, and making most of every last horsepower. In that sense, it was more Lotus than Lamborghini. Anyways, between 1969 and 1979, just 101 examples were built. Partly, this was due to the slow handbuild process. Each car took months to complete. But it was also down to the ownership rules. Officially, buyers needed to provide proof of racing activity from the East German Motorsport Association, ensuring that only those involved in competitive driving could get one. Unofficially though, the rules could be bent if you were politically well connected or useful to the state. Unsurprisingly, several RS1000s ended up in the hands of the GDR's elite, whether or not they had ever set foot on a racetrack. But the RS1000s wasn't just a pretty face. The gull-wing doors weren't there purely for show. In a car this low, they made entry and exit far easier, and the body's curves weren't simply artistic either. They were shaped in a wind tunnel, which was rare for the GDR at that time. The integrated roll structure made it surprisingly safe for a lightweight sports car of the era, and the mid-engine layout gave it a superb balance. And while the Wartburg-derived mechanicals might seem laughable now, they had one advantage. They were easy to service with readily available parts, something invaluable in a country where replacement components often required months of waiting. By the time production ended in 1979, the RS1000 had achieved near mythical status within the Eastern Bloc. It was the unattainable sports car, a machine you might glimpse at a motorsport event or parked outside a government building, but never expected to own. Today, the surviving examples are vanishingly rare. Many were driven hard, raced or neglected once parts became harder to source after reunification. Those that remain are treasured by collectors, and restored examples occasionally turn up in Germany's classic car scene, often drawing more attention than the Ferraris and Porsches parked nearby. Now the RS1000 wasn't perfect. As you might expect, it didn't have the raw power to match its Western contemporaries, and its two-stroke engine meant you couldn't escape the smell of burning oil. But it was a triumph of ingenuity over restriction, a car that proved that even behind the Iron Curtain, passion and engineering skill could create something extraordinary. If the Miura was the poster child of 1960s Italian excess, the RS1000 was its resourceful, stubborn cousin, the one who had to build his own tools and make his own parts, but still turned up to the party looking like $1 million. It remains quite simply the most fascinating road car ever built in East Germany, and if you're lucky enough to see one in the metal, you'll understand why. is not just a car, it's a reminder that even in the most unlikely places, the dream of the sports car never really dies. But at the end of this video, please let me know what you guys think of this car and its story. If you guys found it interesting, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you guys did like this video, you'll most probably enjoy most of my other stuff, so just go through my channel, see if there's almost a like. I'll check you guys in the next one. Cheers,